Hey there, ladies. I'm so glad you've joined us today, and I have a question for you. Have you ever felt like, why does my neighbor seem to be so blessed with that perfect body? Or why does their marriage seem so perfect? Why do they get to have the job that I've always wanted, the car I've always wanted, or even the house I've always wanted? Why does their life seem so very easy? Well, on today's episode of Let's Talk About It, we're going to discuss that very thing. What do we do when that jealousy wants to creep in, and how do we fight against it? Because Proverbs 14:30 tells us, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. And boy, isn't that the truth? But we have some tips that I think are going to help you out. Then joining us later in the show is Danielle Haluska, and she's going to share with us her story and how jealousy became a big issue for her during a very difficult time in her life. So won't you join us today? 3 women with big opinions, but always with a biblical standpoint. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to Let's Talk About It. In today's show, we have another great question to share with you. What do you do when envy and jealousy corrupt your thinking? And how do you take care of it when it comes in? Ladies, share with us.
Let me go first?
Sure.
I wish I had the magic answer to this.
Right.
I do.
Oh, absolutely.
I really wish I did. I was looking at this earlier and it said, but godliness with contentment is great gain. I feel like being content helps.
Yeah.
I feel that being patient helps.
Oh, great.
But when there's something out there that you really desire or you really want for, whether it be money or a baby or whatever, it gets really difficult. Now, if you're out there desiring somebody else's husband, well, I just don't know what to tell you because that's not going to work.
We can't help you with that.
No, I
It's
can't
just
help
wrong,
you.
lady.
Yeah,
It's just wrong.
Some things are just wrong. But jealousy is a feeling, it is an emotion,
Right.
and it's more about, you're not going to keep it away. It's more about how you work it out.
I agree with that.
When it comes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have never felt like I was a jealous person. It just is not something. And then I realized that I was constantly looking at my house thinking, ooh, if that wall was gone, or if I had that color of paint, HGTV was ruining me. It was ruining me.
I love it.
But I had to say, okay, what's this coming from? Because I am a content person. I love my house. I don't need a lot of stuff. And I realized the more I watched HGTV, the less content I was in my own space. And so I literally, I'm going to use a religious word, I fasted from it. I totally fasted from it. I did not feel like I could do a little bit. It was either all or nothing for me with this, I'll call it an experiment. And it really helped. I was not spending time watching somebody else do something at their house. I was tidying up my own place or whatever. So that was a big deal for me, was cutting out HG. Now, I just watched 4 episodes of Hometown the other day, and I'm fine. So I can watch it now. Yeah, I'm beating it. But that did cause envy in me, discontentment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Discontentment's a good word.
Yes.
Yeah.
That connects with envy so much.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know, for me, I sometimes struggle. I know the dream that God has placed in me to speak to women, maybe someday at conferences, things like that, and I want it to happen right away, and I want the numbers to be big right away. And then when I see other women getting those opportunities to speak at churches or big crowds, I'm like, why not me? And I can see that envy start to creep in and wants to stay there. And I have to, fight against that at times. And for me, I don't always win that battle. You know, sometimes I don't get it right, but definitely when I just remember what God has given me and remind myself of the blessings that I do have, that's a big way to help in that situation. And then what's really neat is sometimes I'll be complaining about it or whatever. And then, for example, this show comes to place and God's like, you know, you complain you don't know people to get into those spots. And here it is. I opened a door for you. You knew your husband. And he knows people, and now a door's open for you. So don't think that if I place the dream in you that I won't make it happen, because I will. And so how much do we trust him and allow him to be the one to open the doors in those certain areas of wants and desires in us? Right?
Well, and I feel like even this, whoever's watching, they can look at us and say, oh, she's so pretty, or she's got it all together. You don't live our lives. This is just a short little time that we have together.
Truth.
But we have to believe that even the small things we do, if I'm having coffee with a friend, I am going to be fully present in that moment, because this is about that. I'm not going to be thinking about doing big stuff, because in his kingdom, he may have the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and we think it's a little bit, but it's all big to him. It's all big to him.
Right, what he can do with it.
Absolutely.
Even just because God is just so good in what he does in my life, and I need to remind myself of that sometimes. But, you know, I do these ladies events once a year, and the first 2 were good numbers. We had about 70 ladies, and I was happy with that, but I wanted it to grow, of course, you know. And so we planned for 100 this time, thinking, well, hopefully, that's what I told myself, hopefully we get 100. I would love to have 100. And what, you know, he's like, no, I'm doubling that number. We had 150 instead of 70, so more than doubled what we've had. And God's like, Kelly, you just keep, you know, trusting me. Let me guide it. Let me lead it, and see what I can do with the 5 and the 2. Because I can do so much more than even where you put your mind to, you know. And we forget that sometimes, and we try to do it our own way, and it just doesn't work.
And I think that feeling all in of itself is exhausting, the jealousy.
Oh, it is.
It's so exhausting.
You're
And
right, Teresa.
I remember in John and I in our younger days with 3 kids, and we moved here, and I was an x-ray tech, but I chose not to go to work because I didn't have any family here. And I made a lot of good friends, and I'd watch people like take their kids to the beach every year, and I'm like, I have to take my kids to Kennywood, like really? But you know what, I look back on that, and my kids don't know any different.
That's right.
And we have great memories of
Yes.
Kennywood, and great memories of Sandcastle, and great memories of the Pittsburgh Zoo.
That's
so
right.
what was wrong with that?
That's right.
There was nothing wrong with that. And you know what, and now you fast forward all these years, and we've progressed, we make more money now, we've learned how to manage money better, and now guess what? We get to go to, not just to the beach, but we get to go to Florida now to the beach. Like, it all will work itself out, but I can remember thinking, geez, I wish I could do that. Like, I wish I could afford to do that. But I was not appreciating what God was giving me that I could afford to do. And I think you get lost in that, and it's so exhausting, and it almost makes you competitive.
Absolutely.
And that makes you exhausted.
Yes. And I think when I was younger, I wished I had something new. And why can she have that when she was looking at me thinking, oh, I wish I could stay home with my kids. You know? The grass is not always greener. It's just not.
Isn't it funny how we want things that other people have, and they're looking at us and wanting some of the things that we have, and if we just stop. Stop, because of what it does to your mind and how exhausting it is.
It's
we
exhausting.
just need to stop.
And it's sin. Let's
Yes.
call it.
Yes.
It is sin.
Right.
And it will become a divider.
Absolutely.
It will be a divider.
It will be.
And you know, our guests that we're having today, it became a divider.
Yes.
And it's crazy, like something as much as envying somebody being able to take a vacation that you can't can actually divide a relationship, and that's so incredibly wrong.
And I think another thing with envy and jealousy that really plays a big role is we have become a people that isn't willing to wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want it when we want it, how we want it.
Our kids want what we have now.
Right.
After 30 and 40 years.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
And
it's true.
And God never wanted that.
No.
He wants us to wait.
Yeah.
He wants us to allow him to bring the blessing.
Right.
Too, you know.
Teresa, read that scripture again, please.
But godliness with contentment is great gain. It just stood out to me.
Gosh, that's good.
It just stood out to me.
That is a good word.
It is.
And I wrote down here, sometimes we try to fill voids in our lives with things.
Absolutely.
With things. And that thing's going to be old news, and then it's going to be another thing.
That's
so you're
right.
really just a dog chasing its tail.
And that's a great point because, you know, as ladies, sometimes we feel this void or this emptiness. And so then we do try to fill it with something just to take away that pain or that
Yes.
hurt or whatever. And then once that's there, then we look for that next thing.
That's right.
Because what we all know, what's the one thing and only thing that really can fill the void? And that's a relationship with God. And when we try to fill it with all those other things, we're still in the same place and still in the same mess that we were.
Absolutely. And
Right.
a relationship with God is not a narrow thing. I mean, if we're saying, oh, I need to fill that void with a relationship with God, that's not something that's narrow. It's big. It involves people. It involves activities. It involves work. If I'm jealous of someone, I need to go serve someone else. And that is going to take care of me being jealous of somebody.
And I
That's a
think
good thing, yeah.
I now view myself, I'm a blessed woman. Regardless if I have a health issue, regardless if somebody else has more money than me, regardless if somebody's going to Europe and I'm going to Virginia Beach.
To Kennywood.
Which I haven't been for a long time and I should go. And, I'm still a blessed woman.
That's right. Because of God.
Because of God.
That's it.
That void is filled and then I feel blessed even though.
You feel contentment. I
Yes,
love that
contentment.
scripture.
Not to say that it doesn't creep in and it will creep
Absolutely.
in all of our lives.
But you recognize
But
it.
I recognize. Yes.
Right. So, lady, I know I heard Arlene say one way that she's really combated it the one time was by fasting.
Yes.
Which I think is a great tool. What are some other things we can do when we feel that it's starting to creep its ugly head?
Well, I said serving. Honestly,
I like that idea. Yeah. It's humbling.
It is. And you think, oh, well, where would I go? You walk over to any nursing home and say, I'd like to visit somebody that hasn't had a visit in a month. They're going to give you a list of people that have not been visited in a month. And you start
Taking your
serving.
mind off yourself.
Absolutely.
Serve a funeral meal.
Oh, definitely.
It will definitely put you in your place really quick.
Yes. Yes.
Really quick.
Sometimes we think, oh, if I pay for the person behind me at Starbucks, that's not serving. That's doing a kind act.
Yes.
I'm talking about real serving. Real serving that takes our minds
Off of ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That is the key. That's
Right.
the key.
So, ladies, I hope you heard our heart today about envy and jealousy and how it can really affect us, and especially in the mind. If it's affecting you, I encourage you to use some of these tips to help you further your walk with God as He leads and directs you. There are so many things that we can do to be a people of peace and joy, and jealousy will never get you there. When we come back, we'll have Danielle join us as she tells her story about how jealousy and envy really affected her in a major way.
Impact Productions, a multi-layer technology company providing on-site, online, and in-studio video services. Contact Impact Productions to capture your story.
Welcome back. Today we have Danielle Haluska with us, and I am so excited for her to be with us and to share a really raw and real story with us that I bet is going to touch some women out there in a real way. Danielle, before we get into the story part of it, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. I am a mom to soon-to-be 7-year-old Samuel.
I didn't know he was 7. Holy
He'll be 7 in November. So really crazy. He's in first grade. I am wife to Tom. We just actually celebrated 10 years of marriage. And most recently, I started working at Precious Life. Yeah.
So earlier in the show, ladies, we talked about envy and jealousy and how that can really affect us. And Danielle, envy and jealousy really affected you in a big way in a journey in your life. Tell us how that all came about.
Yeah. So my husband and I were married in obviously 2012. And we tried to start our family immediately. And it just didn't happen, and it didn't happen month after month. And I was close enough to that age of 35, so after 6 months, a doctor was willing to see me and kind of do some testing, and I did learn that I had some things going on that was going to inhibit us or provide challenges for us to become pregnant. And so, which then about 6 months after our marriage, I started the infertility journey. And it wasn't soon long after that I got really angry, and so it really took a toll on many of my friendships and relationships. I don't even know, like maybe a year and a half into trying, we had just completed some medical treatment. My sister-in-law got pregnant, and it got real ugly. And so I can reflect back and really just say I didn't even really like the person I was. I surprised people still loved me for how, just even, I remember one time I told my sister-in-law she couldn't hug me anymore because the thought of her belly and my belly touching would just crush me. But then it started to really, I remember one time my husband had come home and he was like, "You're a zombie and I hate it," and so I just kind of morphed into this person that I just wasn't the same. I wasn't who I was, and it really kind of affected every part of my being, and it really just came to this belief that I really was being punished and God hated me and he was angry with me and I wasn't going to get what I wanted. And so it really just kind of took a toll on everything.
When I heard that you were going to share this story, it really resonated with me because it took 7 years for us to have our second child. And so I know those feelings of jealousy and envy that come about, and how I felt, like the words that you're saying were like the same things that I was feeling. I didn't want to be at my job anymore. I asked my husband if I could even quit because I was not in a good headspace. I walked off of our worship team. I didn't want to be at church. It's a hard thing to really explain to people how that feels and how it makes you just question God, question why. Like you're always asking why.
Is it the hormones that is causing it, or is it literally feelings that you're having, or is it a combination of both?
So, it really is, it's heartbreaking, it's like this, it's grief month after month, because you try and then you take a test. I should probably have bought stock in tests. I would be rich at this point. Because I just, I don't know, it's early as 6 days. And so 6 days I would start testing and then it would, and then if you were late at all and it was like, oh my goodness, yes, it's happening. And then it didn't. And so it was this repeated cycle of just being crushed month after month.
Up and down.
Up and down. It's totally a roller coaster.
It is.
And so, it's just this repeated cycle of just heartbreak.
Right.
So I think that's where that jealousy just comes in, right? Is that you believe it might happen and then it doesn't. You're so angry. Oh my gosh, I just think of things sometimes that I said and did, but when my sister-in-law got pregnant, we were taking a class together, an exercise class, and the instructor was like, "Oh, that's so exciting." And I looked at it because she didn't come because she wasn't feeling well, and she looked at me and she was like, "That's so exciting about your sister-in-law." And I said, "Yeah, I wish it was me."
Yeah.
And I walked away. Who does that?
people in your life that were getting pregnant probably were like, oh no, like
yeah, oh yeah, when I think about that, that should have been a time that they should be celebrating. We're mourn with those that are mourning, but rejoice with those that rejoices. And it was so hard to rejoice in any of that.
Yeah.
Because it just felt like this thing that I wanted so deeply. In some ways, it was like, but God, these we're supposed to multiply. Why aren't you letting me multiply? And so you just get really angry and bitter at the thought of it. And Kelly, I left a job. I stopped working with children. I had been working with children for a long time.
Teacher.
I was doing mental health, outpatient counseling. And I just could not work with children anymore. And so I actually switched and started working with adults and did change to drug and alcohol counseling at that point then, because I just could not bear the thought of working with kids because I wanted my own.
Yeah.
And so I can absolutely relate to that.
Yeah, and you just, like, there were days that I remember falling on my knees and just crying out, like, why, God, why? Like, why is this happening? Why can't I have a baby? And for me, it was a little different because I did have one, so I didn't understand why I couldn't have another one. And, for me too, if anybody would have ever asked my dream as a child, it was to be a mom.
Yeah.
And not a mom to just one, but, And so I didn't understand why was this happening. And so I would get angry or I'd get sad, depressed. I remember I had a word spoken over me that said, Kelly, if you do not change the avenue that you're on, the depression is going to get so much worse, and you're going to be in a place that's very hard to get out of. And in that moment, I wasn't so deep in it, so I thought, oh, that word is so off. But as I look back, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what was happening.
Absolutely.
It's a hard road.
Yeah, absolutely.
How long did you do the infertility treatments?
Yeah, so we did one round of medical treatment, and I just knew I couldn't do it again.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were unsuccessful, and we did end up about a year later. Trying to think. That was 7 years ago, so
yes.
now, more than 7 years ago. But we eventually went down the road of adoption because we were given like a 1% chance with medical intervention. I didn't want to do medical intervention again. It was just, it took an emotional toll on me, physically, emotionally. It was not for me, and I knew that. So we then pursued the adoption route. And so we pursued the adoption route about 2 years into our infertility journey. And then 13 months after we started the infertility journey, we became parents.
Aww.
Yeah.
And I love that because, I always say to people, when you're on a journey like this, listen to what God's telling you and leading you to. Sometimes it's adoption, sometimes it's wait and wait some more. But whatever it is, if you're obedient to Him, He's going to bless you in such a mighty way. What would you say was the turning point for you?
Yeah, God is so good. And I wasn't really walking with the Lord at all, but He was so gracious to me. And He really, and I can honestly sit here today and say infertility was the best thing that ever happened to me because He stripped me. He peeled back layers that needed to be peeled back, and healing began because He met me there. Really a turning point for me was I was driving in my car. I was listening to the radio, and I had just Redeemed by Big Daddy Weave had just come out, and I had bought it on a CD, and I wanted to listen to it, and I put the CD in, and it wouldn't play, and it spit the CD out, and I put the CD in, spit it out, and I got so angry, and I lost it. I mean, I was yelling at God. I was like, you don't care about me, like, why, you won't even give me a baby, or you won't even give me a song, let alone a baby, like, why are you doing this to me? And I'm like sobbing on my way to work, and I pushed in the CD one more time, and I said, please, God, and the CD popped out, and just tears are flowing, and I'm crushed. And I was like, I'm done with you, I'm done. And at that very, very moment, I'm just getting the chills thinking about it. From that very moment, from the very beginning, Redeemed was on the radio. And I was like, I'm so sorry, I don't mean it. But at that moment, there was just this reality for me of like, okay, like I hear you. and it really began a journey of like just kind of healing from many things, finding forgiveness in a lot of things from my past, and kind of learning that God wasn't punishing me, you know, and then God gave us.
He loved you in His own way.
He did.
Like, no, I'm not going to play the CD. I'm going to show you in a different way.
Correct,
Yeah.
and I needed that. You know, I really needed to understand that He was going to be there for me. He wasn't angry with me, but I needed to wait for Him, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then He just gave us multiple signs that we needed to stop the medical treatment and go towards adoption. He kind of just gave us multiple signs, and then when we kind of started to think about, I knew adoption would be like in the end I'd be a parent, right? And so that kind of started to provide comfort, but really the reality of my real comfort became when I just started to grow with the Lord and kind of understand that. But yeah, it took a while.
So it's not a journey that we would ever probably want to do again, but what I heard you say, and I know that I felt, is it's a journey that was worth it because of what God taught us in and through it. So thank you, Danielle, for sharing your story, for being so
Absolutely.
raw
Yes.
and real with us. Ladies, when we come back, I'll have a tip to share with you.
Made by Vogel is a father and son business that produces high-quality handmade wooden products such as cutting boards, bowls, bottle stoppers, and more. Products for sale can be found on their Etsy site or in downtown Altoona at the Clay Cup. You can't go wrong buying from Made by Vogel.
Before we get to our tip for today, I want to remind you that you can go to Facebook and join our group, Let's Talk About It. And in that group, you can send your tips or questions for us, and we will maybe use them on our show. So make sure you go to that group. But here's the tip for today. When it comes to decorating, there's something in me that gets completely excited. All right, maybe it's weird, but I truly do love decorating. Decorating for a birthday, a big event for the church ladies, or even in my home. It doesn't matter what the event is, decorating is a favorite. Some people, maybe they don't like it at all, and maybe even it makes them feel overwhelmed at times if they have to decorate for something. But my tip for you today is don't be afraid of color when it comes to decorating. A pop of color can add to any decor. At home in my kitchen, I have these muted colors, but then I decided to add this pop of bright orange to bring it all together. Now, I just had a ladies' event where we used a lot of navy, but then we added this touch of gold for a pop of color again. Even in this set, you will see on TV a pop of pink. See, pops of color, in my opinion, can really bring it all together and make it stand out. So don't be afraid of color. God created so many beautiful colors, so why not use them? And hey, share your pictures with us of where you may have used a pop of color decorating. And we'll see you next week for Let's Talk About It.